Problem 1. A mine is taken on lease at a minimum rent of rupees 10,000 per annum, merging into a royalty of rupee 1 per ton of the ore raised with a right to recoup short workings during the first 3 years of the lease. This is very important. In case there are any short workings, you know what is short working? I explained to you yesterday. It's a difference between the minimum rent and the actual royalty. That is, in the years when the minimum rent is more than the royalty that is earned, you have a short working. And these short workings, basically, which are losses, this agreement says it's not going to be the same in every problem. This problem says that it can be recovered, recouped, or recovered during the first 3 years of the lease. So you can't recover any short workings after 3 years. So whatever you can recover only from in the first 3 years. The raisings for the first 5 years were: first year 2,000 tons, second year 5,000 tons, third year 15,000 tons, fourth year 18,000 tons, and fifth year 20,000 tons. What is the meaning of raisings? The output from the mine. Okay, they were able to raise so many tons across the 5 years. Show the necessary ledger accounts in the books of the lessee with minimum rent. Now here we don't have any names as to who is the lessee and who is the lessor. So we're just going to say lessor and lessee. And they've also said with minimum rent. Okay, so that means we have to use that method which uses the minimum rent. See, broadly the problem is divided into two parts. The years where minimum rent is more than the actual royalty, and the years where minimum rent is less than the actual royalty. So if it's more, then you have two options: with minimum rent, without minimum rent. If it's less, there's just one option. When actual, there's no minimum rent in that. Okay. So first we need to prepare something called as the analysis of royalties payable. Okay. It's also called, you can use any one of these, memorandum royalty statement. Some books show it as analysis of royalties payable. Some books show it as memorandum royalty statement. Basically, what we are going to calculate here is the royalty in each year, the short workings, how much can be recovered, and so on. Okay, so this is the analysis. So we are going to have a number of columns here. Okay, so the first one is the year. First column is the year. Second column will be the total raisings, or we call it the total production, or you can call it the total output. Okay, so those tons, whatever is mentioned, that's going to be the second year production. Then we are going to have royalty. Okay. Then minimum rent. This is going to be the same every problem. Mostly it's going to be like this. Minimum rent. Then we are going to have short working / surplus. Surplus is when your actual royalty is more than the minimum rent. Short working is when minimum rent is more than the actual royalty. Short working / surplus. Okay. Then we have short working recovered. Short working recovered, or also you can say recouped, since they've used the word recouped or recovered. Then we have short working. Since the columns are small, I just write it as a short form. Short working carried forward. Short working carried forward. Then we have short working transferred to P and L account. Those short workings that cannot be recouped have to be transferred to P and L account. And the last one is the final payment. We call it payment to landlord. Payment to landlord or lessor, whoever one, either term you can use. Payment to landlord or lessor. Okay, so let's just go through these columns again. First will always be here. Then you'll have production, or you can say output. Okay, the way whatever is given. Next is royalty that is calculated on this production. Then you have the minimum rent, which will be given in the problem. Short working or surplus, which will be the difference between these two. Okay, any short working if you can recoup, short working carried forward, short working transferred to P&L, payment to landlord. Is this clear? So we start with the first year. First, we'll put down all the information that's given to us. You can do it year by year, or I feel it's better to put down all the information. So in the first year, we have one, two, three, four, five. Okay. What's the production? The raisings for the first 5 years. First year was 2,000 tons. Mind you, this 2,000 is tons. It's not rupees. Okay. We have to calculate and convert it into rupees. So it's 2,000 tons. You can just put this in tons, just so that you know. Then the second year is 5,000 tons. Third year is 15,000 tons. Fourth year, 18,000 tons. And fifth year is 20,000 tons. How will I calculate the royalty now on each of this? This is the output. How will I calculate the royalty? Have they given us a rate of royalty? Right in the beginning, they've said merging into a royalty of rupee 1 per ton. Okay, so rupee 1 per ton, how will I get it? This multiplied by 1. So it's going to be, this is going to be in rupees. All the remaining column is going to be in rupees. So though the figures are the same, don't get confused. This is now 2,000 rupees. If it was 2 rupee or rupees 2 per ton, this would have been 4,000. Whatever is the royalty. Okay. So 2,000. Here we have 5,000. Same thing. 15,000, 18,000, and 20,000. How did I get this? Production into, if you want, you can write it somewhere. Production into the amount per ton. Next, how much is the minimum rent given to us? How much is the minimum rent? 10,000 per annum. So every year, minimum rent is 10,000. $10,000 every year. Now we'll have to start calculating year by year. Okay. You want, you can write this also year by year as we come, but it's better since it's all information given to you, it's going to remain the same. That doesn't change. So you can write it in advance and then do the remaining year by year. Okay. Now in the first year, we have a short working or a surplus. Short working is what? When minimum rent is more than the actual royalty. Surplus will be when actual royalty is more than the minimum rent. In the first year, what do we have? Short working of how much? 8,000. 10,000 is the minimum rent, 2,000 is the actual royalty. So if it's a short working, I put it in brackets to show it as a negative figure. Okay. Now, Can we recoup anything in the first year itself? We have a loss. Does recoupment come into the picture? It makes no sense. So we're just going to put a dash. Recover. Recover from a surplus. You'll see how this recoupment works in the later years. Okay, it's a loss that you kind of try to recover from a surplus. When you have a surplus, previous year short workings are recovered from the next year's surpluses in case there's a surplus. Okay. So how much are we carrying forward? We have not been able to recoup anything. How much are we carrying forward? Short working carried forward. Entire 8,000. Entire 8,000 is going to be carried forward. Here you don't have to put it in brackets because you know that it is short working carried forward. Here I'm putting it because some years we'll have a surplus. So distinguish between which is a short working, which is a surplus. Now, when does this column come into the picture is when you know for sure that the short working cannot be recouped at all. That's when you transfer it to the P&L account. Are we going to transfer it here or there is hope in the first 3 years that we can recover this money? We don't know what it will be in the next 2 years. So we still don't transfer it. We are going to carry it forward till it's the last year we can. So profit and loss account, the transfer happens only when you know for sure that you can't recoup it any. Okay, so again this is going to be a dash. And how much will be the payment to landlord when you have what is the correct? It's going to be 10,000. That's a whole agreement, right? You have to pay a minimum of 10,000 to the landlord. That's why it's called minimum rent. If actual royalty is more, then you compare between the two. So it's going to be 10,000. Okay. Now let's come to the second year. So second year, do we have a short working or a surplus? Again, short working of how much? 5,000. Short working of 5,000. Can we recover anything? No. So we are going to put a dash. Okay. Next. Now how much are we going to carry forward? How much are we going to carry forward? We have 8 of last year and we have 5 of this year. So it's going to be a total of 13,000. Are we going to transfer anything to P&L? No, because short workings can be recouped in the first 3 years. So we still have hope for another year. Maybe in the next year there's going to be some surplus. Okay, so we are not going to transfer anything to the P&L account. How much will be the payment to landlord? 10,000. Okay, come to the third. Any questions still here? Anyone has any questions? Okay, next year. Now in the next year, what do we have? We have a surplus. Your actual royalty is more than the minimum rent, so you have a surplus. So don't put it in brackets. It's going to be 5,000. How much loss do you have till now? How much short working do you have till now? 13,000. But right now you have a surplus of 5,000. So how much can you recover? At the most you can recover 5,000. At the most you can recover 5,000. Now also remember what is the agreement? They said short workings, if any, recover during the first 3 years. Is this our third year? So if there are any short workings, this is the last year. This is the last year. We can't carry it forward. If we can't recover it now, we transfer it to the P&L. Okay. So will we have anything in this carry forward? What's the meaning of carry forward? That means there's hope in the next years to recover it. But right now we can't recover because that's the agreement. They said you can recover it only in the first 3 years. So can we have anything carried forward? No. So that's going to be dash. But in the profit and loss account, how much are you going to transfer? Total of 13 minus 5, it's going to be 8,000. So out of 13, you were able to recover only 5 and the remaining 8,000 gets transferred to the P&L. If it was say short workings can be recovered in the first 4 years, how much would you have carried forward here? 8,000. This would have been dash because you still have another year to recover. Is this clear, everyone? The difference? Those online, any questions? Those online, any questions? If you have any questions, please type it in the chat box. Now the next question. How much are we going to pay the landlord? Do you have 15,000 to pay or you've used part of it? You have used part of it, right? Out of 15, though 15 is correct, but out of 15, you have used 5 to make up previous year losses. How much are you going to pay? Understood? So you need to be careful in these years. Is this clear? Now the next two are simple. Again, what do we have? Royalty is more than the minimum rent. So we have a surplus of 8,000. So there's no question of short working. So all this will be dash. See, even though we have a surplus of 8,000, we couldn't recover that previous loss because the agreement says only first 3 years. Okay. So how much are we going to pay the landlord now? Very good. Now we are going to pay him the full 18,000 because that's what is promised, and we have not used any part of that 18,000 for any recovery. Clear? Same thing last year. You have a surplus of 10, no short workings. And how much will you pay the landlord? This is the complications in these problems are this recovery of short workings. That's it. If there's any complication, they'll make that complicated. How to recover that short work. So if you see across problems, we'll be doing almost the same thing, except when it comes to that recovery of how to show that recovery. Okay. So now they've asked us to pass entries in the books of the lessee. Okay. Those online, any questions? Any questions? Okay. In the books of the lessee, okay. So they have said with minimum rent account. Which will be the accounts? Which will be the accounts? One is surely minimum rent account because that's said. What else? Which will be the other accounts? Landlord account, yes. Then royalty account and another one, short working. We don't open the P&L account. What happened, Kimberly? Ask us. What happened? You cannot see. You can't see because it's small. Is it because of the eyesight or something like that? Because if okay, check now. Okay, fine. So we were discussing which are the accounts. It's a minimum rent account, royalty account, short working account, and the landlord account. If they are not set with minimum rent, you are free to choose any method. You're free to choose any method. So that time, if you choose without minimum rent, you'll have just 3 accounts: royalty account, short working account, landlord account. Is that clear? So the first is going to be minimum rent account. Then we are going to have royalty account. Short workings account, and then finally the landlord account. Okay, now you need to know your journal entries. If you want, you can keep your journal entries at your side, to your phone or something like that, just to go back. Okay. Now we have to do year by year. Okay. Now there are two sets of entries: entries where the minimum rent is more than the actual royalty, and entries where the actual royalty is more than the minimum rent. Now, in the first 2 years, is the minimum rent more than the actual royalty? Yes, in the first 2 years. Okay. So in the first 2 years, we are going to use the first set of entries with minimum rent. What's the first entry now? Minimum rent account debit to landlord. Good. Minimum rent account debit to landlord. So we don't have any dates here. So we're just going to write first year, second year, third year. Okay. So minimum rent account debit first year to landlord. How much is the minimum rent payable? 10,000. Minimum rent payable is 10,000. So if we say minimum rent account debit to landlord, in landlord account it will be first year by minimum rent. By minimum rent. Okay. With minimum rent, there are two entries. Without minimum rent, it's just one. Those two entries which I was explaining yesterday, the bifurcation. What's the second one? What? What you said? What you said? What is the second entry? What's the next entry? Royalty account debit, short working account debit to. If minimum rent is debited, there it is credited. Royalty account debit, short working account debit to minimum rent. If we were solving under the other method without minimum rent account, it would have been just one entry. Royalty account debit, short working account debit to landlord. Okay, with minimum rent, it is two. So royalty account debit, short working account debit to landlord. So sorry, to minimum rent, royalty account first year. Royalty account debit to minimum rent. Royalty account debit to minimum rent. How much is the royalty? 2,000. So the entry is royalty account debit, short working account debit to minimum rent. So we also have to say short working account debit to minimum rent. How much is the short working? 8,000. Correct? Yeah. Short working is 8,000. And then in minimum rent, it will be by royalty and by short work. So royalty is 2,000, short working is 8,000. So these are the two entries for royalties for minimum rent payable. These are the two entries for minimum rent payable. Minimum rent account to landlord, royalties account debit, short working account debit to minimum. Okay. Next is for payment. Payment of the minimum rent. What's the entry when you're paying in the books of the lessee? Landlord account debit to bank. Landlord account debit to bank. How much is paid to the landlord? 10,000. And then finally, transfer the royalties to, what's the third one? Transfer the royalties to P&L account or trading account. Now, we have to decide whether it's P&L or trading. What will it be here? We're talking about production. It's going to be the trading account. Okay, we are talking about sales, then it's the P&L account. We're talking about production, it is trading. So what's the entry? P&L account debit, trading account debit to royalties. So in royalty account, it will be by trading, by trading. Yeah. So we are done with the set for first year. Close this. Total here is 10,000. I think all the accounts are tallying 10,000 except short working. Sorry, except short working. 10,000. This is also closing. So just close it here. Similarly, short working. Now, short working, what we are going to do with this? What are we going to write here? There's nothing else. What have we done with the short working? Carry forward. So it's going to be by balance carried down. Okay, comes from the statement itself. First year, by balance carried down 8,000. So I think we have closed all the accounts. So if we say by balance carry down, just so that we don't forget, bring it down to balance brought down 8,000. Okay. Now same thing, same set of entries we pass in the second year. Second year, what is the, again, it's a situation where the minimum rent is more than the actual royalties. So the same set of entries all over again. So the first entry is minimum rent account debit to landlord account. So second year now, to landlord account. Minimum rent again is 10,000. So if we say to landlord account, in landlord it will be by minimum rent. Okay. Then the next entry is royalties account debit, short workings account debit to minimum rent. So royalties account to minimum rent. What is the royalty in the second year? 5,000. To minimum rent. Short working is also 5,000. And in minimum rent account, you will have it as by royalty 5,000, and by short working 5,000. By short working 5,000. Okay. Next is landlord account debit to bank. Landlord account debit to bank. $10,000 is being paid to the landlord. And then the last one is transfer the royalties to the trading account. 5,000. So if you see this one balances, the minimum rent account balances. This one also closes. Short working, again we will have a balance carried forward. By balance carried down, 13,000, 13,000. Bring down the balance. Third year, 2 balance brought down, 13,000. Okay, so we've closed all the accounts. Now we move to a slightly different situation in the third year where the actual royalty is more than the minimum rent, and because of that we have had some kind of recoupment, and we've also had transfer to the P&L account. Okay, so now we move to the second set of entries where actual royalty is more than the minimum rent. What's the first entry? Quick. There's no short working now, so it's directly royalties account debit to landlord account. Royalties account debit to landlord account. So in royalty account, third year, you have to know the journal entries well to landlord. How much is the actual royalty? 15, I think. Yeah, 15. Then you have, if you say royalty to landlord, in landlord it will be by royalty 15,000. By royalty 15,000. 10,000. How is it 10? Royalty is 15,000. No? We have moved to the third year where the actual royalties are more. How much is it? Royalty is 15 now. Okay. Okay. So royalties account debit to landlord account. Then next is the payment. Okay. Landlord account to bank, and also there's another part to the entry. If there's any short working that is recouped. Do we have a short working that's recouped? Yes. In the third one, we have a short working. So the entry will be landlord account to bank. We'll post it in landlord first. Landlord account to bank, to bank, and to short working recouped. How much is finally paid to the landlord? Check and tell me. How much is finally paid to the landlord? Yes, 10,000 is paid to the landlord. And how much is recouped? Yes, 5,000 is recouped. If there was no recoupment, it would have been landlord account to bank, entire 15,000. Is that clear? So that I told you yesterday also that to short working, that part that is recouped is there only if there's a recoupment. Otherwise, in the next years, you're going to see that we are not using that part. So only in the year that is recouped. So if you say landlord to bank to short working, in short working, it's going to be by landlord, sorry, yeah, by landlord, it's going to be, how much is recoup? 5,000. What's the next entry for? You make the payment, you make the payment, you see if you can recoup anything. If nothing can be recouped, what do? You transfer it to the P&L account, the short workings. Did we have short workings transferred to P&L account in this year? Yes. Okay, what will it be? Profit and loss account debit to short working. So in short working, is it short working? Yeah. In short working, it's going to be by P and L account. By P&L account. How much did we transfer? Look at the statement and tell me. 8,000. 8,000. Okay, so basically you have to pass your entries based on that statement. What is happening in each year to reflect whatever is happening in the statement. And finally, transfer the royalties to the trading account. Third year, by trading account, total is 15. So we are done with the third year. Now let's close this 15,000. Close your short working account. I think the short working account now balances 13,000. 13,000. So what did we do? We recoup part, and the part that we couldn't recoup, we transferred to P&L account. Landlord account also balances 15,000. 15,000. Did we have any entries in minimum rent account this year in the third year? Nothing, because we don't, minimum rent account doesn't make a difference. Okay, because it doesn't need to be taken into. Now we go on to the fourth year. Again, royalty is more than the minimum rent. What's the first entry? What's the first entry? Royalty account debit to landlord account. So fourth year, to landlord, I think it's 18,000. 18,000. Then we have, sorry, royalty account to landlord. So in landlord, I have to say by royalty, fourth year, by royalty, 15,000. Sorry, 18,000. Next, now the next entry is landlord account to bank to short working. Are we going to take it as to short working also? Do we have any short workings? No. So it's just going to be landlord account to bank. What's the meaning of that? The entire 15,000 is being paid to the landlord. Okay. So if you see here, the entire 15,000 is paid to, sorry, I say 15. The entire 18,000 is paid to the landlord. So landlord account to bank. To bank. Next one is short workings transfer to P&L. We don't have any short workings, so the entry doesn't come. And finally, transfer the royalty to the P&L. Sorry, not P&L, trading. By trading. Now we come to the last year, which exactly is the same. Royalty is more than the minimum rate. So again, royalty account debit to landlord account. Royalty in the last year is 20,000. So if we say royalty to landlord, in landlord it will be by royalty, fifth year, 20,000. Next, landlord account to bank, make the payment. Finally, transfer the royalty to the trading account. So the only probably a difficulty was there in the third year because of the recovery and the transfer of short workings carry forward of short work.